So welcome to those who are already here. Gosh, so many of you are already here. Thanks, Alan, for joining. And then we're at Caroline. Lovely to see you again today. And Jay, Kevin, Leslie, Louise, Penelope, Phil. Oh, Phil's going to help me out a little bit later. Philip, two Philips, Rose, Sharon, Neil, nice to see you again. Paul and Tony. Oh, so some good stuff coming because lots of people on. That's great. And we'll be starting in about a minute's time. Okay, just like one more minute and then we'll start. So today's session is one of our AVN member training sessions. So this for the next 60 plus minutes, we're going to actually look at some of the one of the tools that you can look at and focus purely on that and the things that you can do and the way you can use it at the moment with your clients. So we've hit past. I'm sure some other people will be joining us, but we'll just get on and move forward as we can. Okay. So today we decided, I think from the feedback that we've had from the group sessions that we've been having recently, that we probably need to have another look at the PMI folder, the numbers folder. So that's this one that I keep showing. This is the AVN branded one, but you can see behind me that way, I've got some that people have branded themselves, and unfortunately I haven't got some of the ones where people have been a bit more imaginative with the covers and stuff with me, but I'll hopefully show those at another time. And a bit later on, I think Phil is going to show his and just show what he's done with his to make sure that his is part of his whole branding initiative, which is the key thing. So a little bit of a background about PMI. Why did we create it? Well, I think because initially we all know that we'd have to be business advisors. We all know that we need to go and help businesses grow. And we've been flogging this horse, talking about this stuff for 20 years now. You know, right back 20 years ago, we were saying you need to be more than just a numbers person. You need to be looking about added value, adding business growth work, doing this stuff. Now, the problem was that when we started and we offered to our members some of our great business growth packages like Business Edge and Making It Happen, it was just a step too far for so many people. You know, we've been used to, as accountant myself, as accountants, we're used to just sitting and looking at numbers, and it was just too big a step to go from sitting in our back office, doing the numbers, to suddenly be out there, being this super being that was going to change business owners' lives. And it was, and not only was it a step too far for us, but it was a step too far for our clients, who just couldn't go from seeing us as the person who got on and did our accounts to somebody who had enough knowledge and skills to be able to offer proper business advice. And so after a while, we had a thought about this, and we thought, what we actually need is to have a step in between, okay, where people start using their knowledge of numbers and you show them and use them forward. Tom, can you just mute your...
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear you.
All right, okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is where we came up with the Performance Measurement Improvement System, the PMI system, because what we thought was if we could find a way of getting your clients to understand the value of the numbers that we bring to them and start using them as a way of measuring what's going on in a business, identifying ways of improving that, and then obviously lifting the whole performance of the business. So that was why we came up with the PMI, the numbers folder as we call it, because it's based on the numbers that they know that we can produce, the numbers that they are confident that we understand, and then using that as a process to talk about business growth. So helping them change their perception of us in a very simple, structured way. So my next thing that people often ask us is, why is it a folder? In these days of technology, why is it not online? And at the moment, we are looking into that, but the thing is that we still feel that something tangible is still quite important. I don't know about you, but here in the office, in my office at home, I'm surrounded by books and folders, things that I take down quite regularly and have another look at. When I'm looking for information, if I Google it, I can come up with a million things and not find the thing I want. Often when I want to, I can go, oh yeah, it was in that book, and I can find it. And the idea with the numbers folder was that it was something that was tangible, so you could give it to the client, so they had a value equation because they've been given something tangible, not just something that's lost on the internet and they can't quite get to it. Secondly, it went on their bookshelves like this with your branding here, okay, and as a reminder that you were there, as a support process. It became the place where every time you have a conversation with a client and you create an action plan or you give them some key information, they file it in here in one of the 9 sections. And again, it goes back on the folder. So it becomes a record of their performance, their measurement, their improvement, and all the help you've given them. And so we could call somebody and say, oh, John, I was talking to you about the other day about how you're comparing to your competitors. Could you mind just bringing down the folder, the numbers, okay? And we will go to section 6, and let me just talk about that, and let's go through those numbers again. So it's a structure, an easy way for them to get their head around some key issues that are going on in their business based on the numbers, but more importantly, using those numbers to grow the business. And although, yes, we can do it online, you know, you can have all sorts of things. The reality of it is, it doesn't have such a, what's the other thing they use, don't they? They call it about muscle memory, don't they? Muscle memory about coming back to this and saying, yes, this is where the help is. Yes, this is where the help is. And if it's constantly branded as you, and it's in your colors, with your logo on here, then they're constantly reminded every time that you do something that you are part of that solution. So that's really why we do it. Now I'm going to go through the steps, and there are going to be some things that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because we've already looked at them in other training sessions, okay? And if you've got an issue about that, then please let me know afterwards if you think you've missed some training or you would like some additional training. At the end of the session, if you could put that in the chat box and I can come back to you. Or if I find it's a lot of people, we'll do an online session again. But I don't want to keep repeating stuff that we've already done. Okay. Now, we talk about this 9-step process, and it is a logical process, but the reality of it is that a lot of clients will not want to follow it as a logical process. There will be bits of it that they want to do because it seems more relevant or more exciting at the time. And there'll be bits that'll be harder to think about. So they may not want to do it straight away. And it depends on the relationship you've got with the client, where you start. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to share initially the roadmap, okay? So I'm just going to share my desktop and I'm going to bring up, just move that out of the way. This is the roadmap of the PMI process, okay? Now, as an added value member, all these things are inside System Builder. But what I often say to people is, even if you're still a foundation member, not an added value member, please learn about this stuff, understand this process, because this is the first way of starting to talk to people about growing their business. And what it can help you to do is it can help you then think about, excuse me, whether or not they're excited and interested in this. And if you want, then we can just upgrade your membership. It's not a big deal, and like everything else, it's on a month-by-month basis, so we can go through things like that. So what I'm going to just do is I'm going to show you, excuse me, I'll just hide this down here, is what the 9 steps are, and a few of them we're going to look into in more detail. Now also, as with a lot of other resources, there is a toolkit in System Builder, so all the things connected to the PMI, the folder, so all the things about how to get the folder, how to get the inserts, how to get it customized, all of that is in the PMI toolkit. There is also all the things you need for running an event to launch the performance measurement improvement system, if you would like to engage people with it and to show how you're different, which is a great process for, again, positioning yourself differently. So as I go through, I want us to think about the value that each section brings to your client. Okay, so what are we delivering that helps them? So the obvious thing, the first step in the numbers folder, and if you look at the folder structure here, you'll see I've got all 9 steps here. But for each section, you can see it talks about why we've created the folder and why it's important. And then for each section, there's a little bit of an overview, a little bit of a sort of explanation of why this is important and how we can help. So even if you don't cover these sections in a meeting, they can go and look at the sections in the folder themselves and see if they want to pick out something else. So it can be a pick and mix option. And just as an aside, in Time's Up, as you do a quote, in the top right hand corner there are 3 dots in a circle. If you switch those 3 dots, it will then show you the PMI folders sections, and it comprised PMI through Time's Up too. So the whole pricing and the getting paid for the work is all controlled through Time's Up very simply. So let's just very quickly run through, because I'm conscious that I think the marketing has been a bit mixed today, and I'm not sure whether people are expecting 90 minutes or 60 minutes. If you could put that in the chat box, that'd be great, you know, so that I know if I've got a little bit of extra time or not. But let's work to 60 at the beginning. Okay, so step 1, which is the most obvious one, is what do they want? What's the important thing? And the value for them is obviously some clarity, because a lot of them, as we know, have started businesses as technicians, have got, you know, decided they could do it better than their boss, or they wanted to start their own business, and they've carried on working mainly as a technician in that business, and then the business has grown and they've had to take on all sorts of other roles, marketing and finance and sales and people skills. And at no point have they actually stopped and worked out what do they really want. And you know how passionate we are that the business serves the owner, not the other way around. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is actually work out what do they want out of life. And so this roadmap actually has links to the tools for you to have a look at. So if I just click through here, we're going to open System Builder. Okay. So this is the goal setting tool. Now, one thing I would say is all the steps that are in the PMI folder, you should be doing on yourself, okay? It's a good process for yourself. It's a good structure. So if I or your practice growth expert haven't asked you to do this yet, then please look at this goal setting tool and actually do it yourself, okay? So here's the bit for you, your expert in a box, your explanation of how to use the resource, okay? And although it was part originally of our business development, business growth processes, the business edge and the business builder, you can use it all the time, okay? And so you can print off this 24-hour action plan. You can obviously make sure that it's customized with your practice details and the person's detail. And there's a bit of a guide for people to understand that they need to do it. So here is a little bit of a structure that says, right, written goals. If you've got written goals, you're more likely to be successful. We know that, okay? And we need to think about how you spend your time in your business. Because I hope you're doing this. So split into 2 sections, personal goals. So what do they want? And their business goals. And the idea is they can fill this sheet in as many times as they like, okay? Or put as many goals in. The important thing is to make sure that it's smart, okay? And that's why it explains what smart is, and also about the pain. If they fail to do it, what is the pain? Or what is the gain? Because if either of those are not strong enough, then we know that people are not going to achieve it, okay? And what must they do to get it? So these are key things. Now, with this resource, the other really important thing is to make sure that all the key stakeholders in the business complete it. So if it's a sole trader, then their other half needs to be completing this too, okay? Because what that person does affects their home life and what else is going on, okay? If there are multiple partners in a business, all partners need to do it, okay? If there are multiple directors, all directors need to do it. As individuals on their own, without discussion initially with anybody else, okay? So what are their personal goals? That's the most important thing, because understanding that, then how can the business then deliver it? And that's where the business ones are, okay? So if they want to retire, if they suddenly decided that their personal goal is they want to retire in 5 years, then what, and they need to retire with a certain amount of money, then there is a business goal here, isn't there, about how much does the business need to have earned so that they can leave with that income. Okay, so it's important to discuss that. Then how do they spend their time? We talk a lot, don't we, about life-work balance. This is a great way of bringing that in to talk to your clients. You know, is the business serving them, or is it the other way around? And then actually, how are they doing things in their business? What are they doing? Are they managing things properly? Because there's working in the business, isn't there? Looking at how you manage people, how you get customers, and then you start getting working on, which is about developing your team, perhaps developing products, doing skills. So things like that. And then finally, some key numbers for them. So what are some of the key numbers that initially they want to know about? Okay, so, you know, what is the ideal number for their turnover? What's the number now? What's the gap? This is all giving you some key information to start helping them get focused, get some clarity. And then finally, some time saving, because it doesn't matter what business you're in, you never have enough time, do you, to do what you want to do. So that's a really critical resource to have. And it's important because of the fact that you're trying to understand your client, and them getting clarity is really valuable. Okay, so you know, and particularly depends, there are certain times of life, aren't there, where you really only need to get some clarity. So often when you have your children and you suddenly think, okay, I need to work out what I'm going to do to make sure I have time with my children, or pay for their school fees, or whatever else you choose to do. It may be that as you sort of hit your 50s, you start thinking, okay, you know, what do I want to do? What do I want to get out of life for the next 15, 20 years that I'm working? What would make me enjoy my job better? Then as you get into 60s, you're thinking about, okay, what do I need in order for the business to be worth something so that I have my retirement pot? There are lots of different points in life that we can have very different conversations with people, and their goals will change. So again, this is something that it doesn't necessarily have to be done once. You know, you could do it 1 year, and then you can come back and revisit it another year or 3 years down the line. Really important. Okay. So the second thing that I want to talk about here is about the personal balance sheet. So that's about their personal wealth. Okay. So I think you've already all looked at this. Again, let me know if you haven't, but we think we've brought about this already, and that's linked to the IHT system. But again, really getting some clarity about what is their net worth. Thinking about, you know, with their plans, what does that net worth have to be? And again, for younger people, the thought of retiring and pensions can be a bit of a challenge, but the thought of perhaps paying for their children to have a home, or not to have any student loans or whatever else might be the driver. For the older people, yes, it's pensions, isn't it? It's about making sure that we can retire with the lifestyle we want. So thinking about that, okay? So strategically, you would want to look at this first. But what happens quite often with clients is that maybe if you've not got that close relationship already, if you're currently in their eyes just their accountant, then maybe they will come back to that maybe in a couple of months' time, when you've started to have regular communication with them about other things. They may not want to open up straight away. Again, depending on how you position it. So you could go into, do you know what, particularly this time, you know, we're now you know, come out of lockdown, we're in a situation now where we really need to have some clear vision about what's going on in the business. What do you need out of your business? What do you want out of life? This is a great tool to use to get that sorted, to get the personal balance sheet sorted, so they get some clarity about where they are now, where they want to be. Okay, so you know, we do this with you as part of our Practice Growth Expert calls. It's really important that you perhaps have a look at this if you haven't done it already, and get back to your Practice Growth Expert. So of course, now we know where we are and where we want to be, and that's based, a lot of that is based on some SMART goals, some numbers, some focus and clarity, and it's not easy, and you will have to challenge people. And if you've got multiple partners, at some point you're going to have, what we usually say is get them all to do it individually, send you the results privately, you review them to make sure there isn't any conflict of interest, and have a meeting then with them all where you get them to share the key things. Now, if you believe there's going to be a conflict of interest, that still needs to be shared, but obviously you need to manage that gently. So you need to make sure that that's explained. And so you may go back to one person and say, I don't think the rest of your partners know that you plan to retire in 2 years. It's not anywhere on the things that they've written. Have you discussed that? No? Okay, well then we need to bring that into the conversation in a very positive way. But then you have a meeting with them to discuss what those goals are and to start building an action plan of, and more importantly, how important are these things and what is the timeline? That's the critical thing. Okay. So then we've got a business plan, and this is really, which is so vital at the moment, isn't it? You know, with Kirsty's initiative, No Business Left Behind, this business planning, the forecasting, the budgeting is critical now. And it starts to make sense to people if they've done the goals, because if they realize that they know that there's a process somewhere they need to go, an important thing that they need to share, then we really need to make sure, fantastic, everyone thinks it's 90 minutes, we need to make sure that they can see that there's a plan for getting them there. So even though their goals might not be for another maybe 5-10 years, you can start saying, okay, well, let's break that down into milestones. Okay, what needs to happen in year 1? What needs to happen in year 2? What needs to happen in year 3? How are we going to make this move? How are we going to make it work? And let's do some forecasting now. And with the situation that we're in at the moment, it's more vital than ever that we actually do some forecasting. We do some planning. Okay. Now, the resource here about business plan, this is not a plan, particularly for a bank manager, it's more of a plan, again, for a client. So if you look at the resource for business planning here, okay, it has some key information, some history, mission statement, some basic stuff around, but actually getting your people to think about some key information, and then actually looking at how we're going to work that through. So yes, I guess this could be quite useful for the bank stuff, but it's more about actually how to make sure that people think about it. So here we've got like the history, where do we come from? How do you want the business to be seen? And how are you showing the objectives and the business objectives? So how are you bringing in those goals? Okay. So this is really important for you to help build that, but perhaps it's not the business plan so much as we've said, it's the forecasting that's key. And what are the timelines now? And what do they have to change in order to still hit their goals? Okay. Now, there are a lot of people at the moment, I feel, who are very demoralized and depressed about the situation that they're in. It's a big challenge for them at the moment to even think about how they're going to go through. And a lot of them are head in sand, you know, let's just get through today. But they're not going to have a future if they can't start planning. So just giving them that way of being able to say, yes, I need to look at some numbers, I need to understand some forecasting, is really important. So having looked at the goals and developing a plan, the next thing is to start actually getting some measures in place, because it's all right having a plan, but we need to make sure that we're tracking against it all the time. Okay, there's so many times I see people having forecasts and budgets done, and then they don't actually use them. They don't track them. They don't use them as a way of managing stuff. Okay. So this is about actually things that you could offer very easily. The monthly and quarterly review meetings to discuss the results, perhaps doing some bookkeeping or systems advice, getting them onto software so that you can manage it. This is where cloud software comes into its own, isn't it? That you can start getting some real time hands-on information, getting them some key management information, and more importantly, to meet them regularly. And that's really what board view is down here. The board view is about offering them a structured way of talking to you and measuring those numbers. So back to the performance measure improvement system here, we're now measuring, and we're going to check it against the performance and what we expected the performance to be. But we do need to discuss it. You know, we need to have it. And what people need is someone to hold them to account. Someone to say, why is this happening? Why is this not happening? What are the challenges? So the idea is, the board view is a way of allowing people to brainstorm with you. So again, this is all in System Builder, okay? And what it is, it has so many benefits for people, for the client and for you. So there's a lot of things in here about it. But the most important thing, I'm just going to go, right down here. Sorry, just to look if it's got the actual service request. I was going to show you. There's a service request about it. The important thing is to make sure that they realise that you are a sounding board for them. And even if you're a sole trader, actually having a sounding board could be one of the most valuable things you give them. And that's where, sometimes people value not for the amount of money you save or the amount of money you help them earn or grow. It's about having somebody there to listen to them. Somebody who could just be there when things are a bit tough and they can just have a bit of a, chat to and sort things out. Or maybe somebody who needs to be there and to keep them on track, to hold them accountable. So you can take on that role for them. And it's important to say to people, we know that, you've just invested all this time thinking about where you want to go to. You've just invested all your time helping us create cash flow forecasts and planning. Now we need to stay on track with this. So it's really important that somebody holds you accountable. Because the day-to-day, you're in the business, you're focused, you're trying to get the jobs out, you're trying to get the invoicing done, you're trying to get the stock in, you're trying to do whatever else it is, manage your people. You need to actually have some point in the month where you stop and you have an objective look at your business. And that's what board view's about, okay? It's about having a key management meeting, okay? And whether that's just with one person, whether that's a whole partnership group, or whether that's a whole group of directors, they all need to be involved in this, okay? They need to make sure. And you can play any role in that, okay? So you can be just an outsider, who's just a newer outsider who can just say, do you know what, why are these numbers this? Or you can sit and give them some financial information so you can highlight key areas of what's going on. Please don't get too hung up on that. It's really easy for us to get dead excited by lots of numbers and talk through and produce these huge number reports. Your job there is to help them focus on what are the numbers that are important at this moment in time. So have sales dropped? Why? Is the return on investment for capital employed not right? Have a look at that. So it's key things like that you might want to do. And what happens often with these meetings is that when you're having those conversations, it does lead to extra work, because when people need to do stuff, you can always say, do you need help with that? Okay, well, your investment in my time to help you with that is, and you can come up with prices. But the value, like I said, is so important because they have somebody who holds them to account and discusses things with them. So there's a whole briefing note about that. Okay, so important that you do board view, I think. It's really important, whether you can do it monthly or quarterly, but you keep in touch with people. And whether you do it virtually, on Zoom, whether you do it actually going to their premises once we can and sitting in, that's up to you, okay? And that might be the difference between, say, a 4- and a 5-star service. The 4-star might be that you do quarterly virtual meetings. The 5-star could be that you do monthly in their office board view meetings. Okay. So just so you're aware, guys, this stuff, because of the COVID stuff, this stuff is available to you all to use, because we know this is so critical at the moment. It's not going to be available to everybody after the end of July, because obviously there's membership that pays special membership for it. But there are a couple of things in here that I think are so critical that we need to let people know about it. So the goal setting thing, I think, is quite critical. Understanding board view, being able to offer that help is quite critical. Okay. Now, one of the other things you can bring to that board view meeting, as well as the financial information, some reports from their cloud software, whatever, is a one-page plan. And just wanted to spend a little time talking about what a one-page plan is. Okay. There is a resource that explains all about it and has lots of resources about it, but I just want to explain how it works. It's a document that works from the bottom up, okay? And this is why it's critical. The first bit at the bottom has to be the vision or the mission or the goal. It's the thing that every decision that the business owner makes is linked to that. It's going to say, is that going to move me towards my goal, my vision, or does it distract me from it? Okay, so particularly those clients that we know love those bright, shiny objects and are often going off doing odd things. Every time they go and they've got an idea, you can say it's a fantastic idea. Just sit down a minute. Does that help you towards your vision or your goal? Okay, is that helping? And if so, how? And what is the other effects to the business? Okay, if not, then that's a great idea, but just park it for now. Okay, we have to stay focused on the goals. So the bottom bit, the vision or the mission or the goals, however you want to do it, has to be important and it has to be in there. It has to be smart. Okay, so back to being really smart. So specific, measurable, yeah, achievable or possible, whatever you want. Realistic, timely. I like having something that's other extra bits in there, but I think it's important that you make sure that that's important, and what's important to the business is really, really clear. That's the driver. So every month or every quarter when you have your board review meeting, the first thing is reread that mission and goal. Is this still our main driver? Is this still our vision? Knowing what your business goals are and your personal goals are from doing those resources. Are we still on track with this? Is this exactly where we're going? Or has something happened in your life that's completely changed that? We need to understand that. Then it starts working up. So we start looking at underlying success drivers. So everything that we do in the background in a business affects the customer in some way, affects sales, affects costs, okay? So having looked at this, if we just start at the left-hand side, these are the things we're measuring. Customer delight with an average feedback score out of 5. Team happiness with a weekly happiness score out of 10. Investment in our people, so training and innovation. So in this business, what are we doing to actually innovate and grow? Okay, and that's split into ideas, time spent on R&D, and the products launched. Okay, now you can see the actual are in bold and the target is not in bold. So here, customer delight, the goal is 4.9 out of 5. We've got 8.5. Okay, and the important part of this is the action. Do we need to do an action about that? How do we lift 4.8 to 4.9? Well, let's conduct an in-depth interview with 10 of our customers to identify how we can improve this. So there's a process, there's an action that comes out of it. The team happiness score, currently, you know, the target is 8.5 and we've got an 8.9, which is great, but to keep that going, let's have some social events planned, okay? Investment in our people, time spent training, okay? So we've got so many hours. It's actually been higher because we've attended some additional training this month. And that's why, okay? Now, for me, what I would then put is, having attended this course, what are the actions? So again, in System Builder, available to everybody, every time one of your team does any training, any course, there is a course feedback form in System Builder that allows them to share what are the 3 key learning points that they got, and what are the systems that need to be amended or evolved because of this new learning. Because we're all taking on new learning, we're all investing a lot of time in new learning. Let's make sure that it's built into our processes so the customer and the business and the team benefit from that training, okay? And then we've got some innovations here. So look, you know, we need to work out about getting some products launched. So this is our underlying success driver, because if a customer isn't happy, they're not going to buy. We're not going to get more sales. If the team aren't happy, they're not going to give great customer service. There's going to be frustrations. You're going to spend all your time dealing with internal whinging and challenges rather than actually getting a team organized to move forward. If you don't get people trained, if you don't keep people growing and learning, you start stagnating as a business. And that's when your competitors start stepping in. So all of these things, they don't have a direct effect on sales now, but they can have a time lag effect, massive effect later on. So that's why they're underlying success drivers. Then we start looking at actually key sales drivers and key costs. So obviously, dependent on the business, these will change. And it's the same with all of them. These are not set in stone. The criteria you'll measure will depend on the client. And so you'll have a look at this. So for most businesses, there is a lead generation and lead conversion challenge, okay? So there will be some sort of measures around lead generation and lead conversion. And you need to make sure that again, what are the actions that need to be taken to make that happen? And then also looking at average spend, making sure that we're looking at how much customers are spending. And how do we do that? How do we lift that? Is that, you know, coming up with some process like, meal deals like they have, or is it a way of getting them, you know, have things at the till? That's a nightmare, isn't it? Supermarkets usually pick something up there. Is it just about asking the right questions to make sure that they understand the right things they need to buy and extra things? So, you know, there's always thing is that buy a torch. The question is, do you want batteries with that? Make sure they've got everything they need. Okay. And then costs. So costs here, again, will depend on it. So there may be costs developing products and the R&D. There may be costs for marketing, and there'll be data control, obviously. And all of those lead up to the key results. So these are the results that will come out of your software, but this is a consequence of things that happened right down here in previous months. So what were the actions that were taken down here? These affect the following months or future months' numbers. And most people want to know the number of customers, the profit, the cash, maybe the debtors if it's a key thing, but whatever key results there are. So there is some practical points about this, okay? You don't want to find lots of key success drivers, okay? None of these. You need to start at the beginning with clients with some very small number of things because they won't have processes in place to measure a lot of this stuff, okay? And we don't want to overwhelm them. We need to get these measurements, but we don't want to make life even more difficult for them. So we need to find easy ways of measuring stuff. And this is where a lot of technology and automation can help. And we can make sure that we're looking at those things that could help measure these things for them. Keep down to the main point. So thinking about that final goal, what is it that we have to measure? What is it that we have to stay really focused on, okay? And make sure that you have some key numbers. So try and make it small at the beginning and try and make them, I know they won't quite like it, but make sure you are measuring customer happiness and team happiness, okay? Because they are critical to find a way to use that. Now, excuse me, as I keep saying, there is something in System Builder to measure customer happiness and team happiness. They're in there for you to use, but there is no reason why you cannot use them with clients. Okay, there is no reason why you cannot let clients use a similar process with their team. Okay, and maybe build something in, although they're paper-based initially in System Builder, there's no reason why you couldn't build them into MailChimp as a survey, or you couldn't, you know, put them into some sort of email process or something on your website or their websites, you know, so there are other ways of doing it, you know, or even like a little tablet, you know, in a business where actually as people leave, they give a score. You can do all of that. So there's lots of opportunities here of finding ways of making it easier. Just start with what you've got in System Builder and then tweak it, okay? There are lots of things you want to know more about. So here we've got lots of information here about how to use it. And down further on, lots of ideas of things that you could be doing. So underlying success drivers, yes, there's customer delight. And that could be based on all sorts of things depending on the industry they're in. Okay, so it could be about testimonials and thank yous, or alternately, the number of complaints received. It could be about referrals, it could be about on-time deliveries. You know, depending on the different businesses, there are different things that a customer would measure. And sometimes it's worth you sitting in the customer's shoes and thinking, what would it be that would annoy me if this wasn't done properly? Right, well, that's a measure. Okay, so thinking about that, and they may not be able to measure that straight away. How critical is it? Some team stuff here about obviously looking at different team measures, innovation, investment in knowledge, operational effectiveness. So we can look at some measures about the number of systems they've written, maybe the productivity, maybe efficiency. Have a look at wastage, and I'm just going to look at something that helps you with that in a little while. Okay. So you could do all of these things. So remember that it's really important to look at these. So we've got sales drivers now, so things that could help with sales. And again, all of those things lead to perhaps the client doing things slightly differently. And again, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but there are lots of opportunities here. So this resource here gives you loads of things to think about. I wouldn't bring them all to the first meeting when you're doing a business plan, but you've got some things to just drop in, things that might be relevant. So it might be worth you sitting down before you meet the client and highlighting which ones you think were relevant to their business, but also asking the client the things that are relevant to them. What are the things that they need to measure? Okay, so if you remember the other day, when Shane was talking about this in his session, he was saying that cash is, for him, is the important bit. He needs to know where we're at cash-wise. That's the critical thing. So that would be a key result. That would be something that needs to be measured. So here's a blank one. I also want to share with you, oh, wrong document. I'll pick from the document that I've got. There is a spreadsheet version of this. So if I just pull this up for you, just so, because this is quite a useful tool for you. And I'm just going to see if I can make it a little bit bigger. Just going to quickly check the chat box. Right. So actually Phil's been giving some good feedback in the comments about splitting into sort of 2-hour sessions so they can digest different things that we're doing on the PMI, and that it's a good idea to sort of do that. Yes, that's really important to actually break it down and overwhelm people. And that's why, although it's a process of 9 steps, it is a pick and mix. So you think, right, what can we cover in maybe a couple of hours that would be of value today? Okay. So going back to the one-page plan, which is really critical, this is a really useful one for you to use to keep track of things. So it starts just with, I can say, explains here that you put in the year end, you put in the month end that you're going to do, and it allows you to set the targets with the client. So having looked at those cash flows and the plans, you can actually put some targets. So you can put in your key numbers here, so what's going to appear on the one-page plan, and actually put in what your targets are for whatever year it is. Okay. You then have a second page, where you put the actual data that's coming through. So that's what you're going to create. And then it generates for you the plan for each month, so you can have a look at it. And then the plan's already built for you, so you don't have to manually put it into a Word document. You can actually get the software to do it. And it allows you then to sort of work out where you want to put your comments, the things you want to do, and focus. So this is quite a useful way of looking at that. It also allows you to do some graphs. So for some people who are more visual, be able to see what cash and profits are doing, be able to see the number of clients, is it going up or down, turnover. You can choose that. I know you all know how to use Excel. This is not difficult for you to do. Okay, and there's just an example of how one looks, again, for you to use. So important, I think, because this can be quite critical as part of the value that you bring, as part of being able to have monthly or quarterly meetings where you really drill down onto some key numbers and you make some decisions. So, you know, down here, look, we've got the debtors have gone up. The actual debtors is much higher than the target. So we need to do something about that. You know, why is that happening? And sometimes it can highlight that perhaps invoicing isn't getting done. It can highlight the debt collection is not being done. If you're looking at this section here with appointments, it could actually point out that they're not meeting clients as often as they should be. It may not just be a marketing thing. It could be actually the conversion that's the issue. So all of this is really important to have a look at and make sure that we do them, because it's so critical. There we go. So Phil has very kindly said that if anyone wants to look at his website, they can have a look at how he's showing how PMI works as part of his website, how he's explained it, which is very generous of him. Thank you, Phil. That's very kind. Okay. So can you see how by having this opportunity, it gives you two things. You're adding massive value to the client, but not only that, you're giving it's an opportunity for you to talk to the client all the time and bring things forward and actually discuss stuff. So it may be that's, can you see there is a logic to the steps? Because sometimes if you don't understand the goals, you're working blind as far as planning, okay? But the goal initially may be just to be able to financially survive. So the planning for the next 12, 24 months could be financial survival. Well, that's fine, but then actually you need to make sure that that's part of this, what's driving everything. Now, I mentioned that behind some of the one-page plans, you need to probably think about some key ways of getting some of those numbers. And so success driver mapping is a spreadsheet that we have, a tool that actually allows us to show that. Now it's in System Builder, so I'm just gonna, I've already downloaded it so that I can just open it as a spreadsheet for you to show, to see. Open. Let's have a look. There we go. Success driver mapping. Okay. So behind the numbers, often there's a way of, you need to check some things that are happening. And so there are various models in here, which I want you to have a look at. It's really easy to focus purely on sales, and we can do, and that's in here, but we can also use simple stuff that works or business potential to focus on sales growth. Sometimes it's more about efficiency or a process and how it works. So you can see there are different models down here of things to look at. So let's have a look at the general model first. Okay, so this is, let me just make this bigger for everybody to see. Okay, this is about actually getting repeat business. This is all to do with sales. Okay, so it allows you to look at the number of sales, how often they buy, how much they buy, and that gives you a result. Very similar to simple stuff that works. So if we look at a specific model here, okay, you can then break that down into all sorts of things. So you could have the different levels of processes in perhaps a lead conversion or a lead generation, or even in a process. So it allows you to have a look at those key things. So if I just, we've got an actual specific model with some numbers in. Yeah, so this is one about conversion, okay? So this is about, not, we'll talk about sales and we'll do some stuff at work, but this is about conversion, lead generation, lead conversion. So if you have currently 100 customers and 20% of them have a re-inquiry rate, and we get about 711 new leads, okay? 711 plus the 20% of 100 is the 731 sales we get, okay? So out of those inquiries currently, we have 90% of those inquiries we have meetings with, okay? So that's 731 becomes 658. We're only actually touching 658 of them now for meetings. Out of those meetings, we may only quote 95% of them. So now we're down to 625 customers we're looking at out of those leads. And out of those, we win 80%. So out of 731 inquiries, we're getting 500 sales leads at an average sale of £200. And that currently is what's causing the results, the sales and the margins, and then the profit, okay? So it's a rate, really, when we're looking at this and we're going to say, for example, out of that meeting rate, we could change that to 95%. Okay. Then what would that do to the business? Well, we would now start actually meeting more people. Okay. How about for all of those, or maybe say we said 98% of them we did a quote for, because there might be a couple that we don't really want to work with. Okay. That gives that. And out of that, maybe if we could do something that changed the quotes, we could win, say, 95% of those. Now, behind the scenes of how we change all these things, that's actions, okay? But let's look at the opportunity. And what if we could change the average fee to be £250 instead of 200, okay? Then the change to your profit is nearly £47,000 just by changing a process, okay? This is not, so this is about helping people understand that systems and processes are so important. So the first thing you say is, okay, so we've upped the meeting rate. So how do we get more meetings with those inquiries? Is that because you can't fit them in your diary? Is that because you're the only person doing quotes? Is that because you just forget some? So you drill down and you ask those questions and you find out the issues. And then in order to change that meeting rate, you can put some actions in. So it might be that you want to create an automated booking system. Okay. It might be that you want to train somebody else up to be able to do meetings. It might be that you want to have a virtual PA that manages your diary better. And so actually works out the best place to have those meetings. There are lots of opportunities, and normally the client will come up with the answers themselves because they will be thinking about how this works. Okay, so really useful. And then obviously then we said, how do we make sure that we've upped the quotes rate? So what stops you getting quotes out? Is that because you have to do a lot of work finding out costings? In which case, how can we make that simpler? What can we do as far as your stock control to make costings easier? Okay, again, what technology can we use? What software can we use to make that easier? Is it the fact that actually we're not getting, we're not actually getting stuff out because we just haven't got somebody to type it up, or we just haven't got a process to make it easy, or whatever else? So there's lots of opportunities there. Again, it's all in process, it's all systems, it's all actions they can take. And then finally, we said increase the win rate. So what could we do to make the quote appear better, to make it appear more valuable so that they win more quotes? So when Jenny worked with an electrical contractor, she worked really hard changing their quote template so that it talked about value and benefits to the client of the work done, not about, the stock that was going to be used. It actually talked about the value. And that's the importance of most of us. When we make decisions on buying, we're basing it on value. So what can we do to help to change that? Or what can they do to change that? Again, lots of things you could do. And finally, how can we increase the average value of the job? So what else could you show that would be of value to have on top of what they currently have? Okay, so obvious one, okay? Roof inspection, £200. Well, what if you offered gutter cleaning while you were up there? Everybody hates cleaning the gutters out. Often it doesn't get done at all. Would that be something that people would take up? Quite a lot of people probably would. It's the same like if you fit aerials. That's another one, isn't it? If you fit an aerial, television aerial, offering to clean the gutter while you're up there, that could be something that you could do. There would be a cost implication possibly with time, but it would still be perhaps worth it. So there's lots of things like this that you can show your client that they could do. So this is about actually conversion, okay? Really important. You could talk about systems efficiency. So when you think about a business that builds something, in each of those processes, what happens? What happens as far as the amount of efficiency? Because quite often what happens is when you start looking at this, you may find, I'm not sure whether this one's got any details on it, no. So you may find that actually what happens is that at some point in the process, the actual number of things that you get through is much lower than you expected. That might end up being 80%, okay? And that's affecting your business. And maybe that there might be part of it, say you build widgets in this case, there'll be part of the business processes where they have to return widgets because they're not perfect. So when they get to quality control down here, you can see that perhaps there's a much less number come through because something's not right earlier up in the process. Now, I'm not saying you to do all of these things. This is something that you would add on as additional work. You would show them about it in the numbers, but then to physically go in maybe and help them break down a process into steps, that's additional work. But you can see how by helping them measure this, they start taking an interest in their business and where it's profitable and where the challenges are. They start taking ownership of what's going on. So there's a lot of different things in here that you could use as a way of discussing that. I'm just going to quickly check the chat box. Oh, Phil, look, everybody's very pleased. Thank you very much for sharing that. Okay, so again, another resource, it's in System Builder as part of the PMI toolkit to just help you show what's going on. So this is the really important one, isn't it? Is to make sure that every time you're doing something, you're giving them some value. So we're only really looking at how you're doing. So that's starting to get them to get control of their business again. Take control, understand their own numbers, start taking control of it. Now, the step 4 is about where we expect you to store the annual accounts. So every time you do the accounts, they'll go into step 4. And just so you're aware as well, in the folder, even if you haven't done success driver mapping with somebody, there is an example in here showing somebody, this is about inquiries to conversion, to sales, what could be done? So they can, even if they haven't already asked you to do it, they've got an example of one and they can say, oh, that could be useful to me. And that's useful, to talk about. Now, the important thing again about the annual account, is to make sure that you give them some knowledge and some value from those accounts. So part of that process is not only to be filing the accounts, but to give them a document or a recording if it's over Zoom or whatever else, of you interpreting those numbers and explaining them what they mean. If you can make those accounts timely, fantastic. 3 months after the year end, whatever, again, depends on your workflow plans. But whatever, they need to be important. So for you, there is a business builder forum about how to interpret the numbers in the accounts, which is about explaining all the things that we look at in the accounts and all the ratios we do in plain English, okay? So that's in there for you to have a look at. But I think actually most of you could sit down and talk about numbers quite clearly if you just stop for a minute and think about how is somebody who's not financially engaged, not numbers engaged, want to understand these numbers. So what do these things mean? And be able to have some conversations, but making that as valuable. Now, obviously, the next step is about trends in their own businesses. And what we find is that there are 2 types of business owners, okay? Those that want to know what their competitors are doing, that's step 6. And those that don't care what their competitors are doing because they're unique or they just want to know what's going on in their own business. That's fine. You don't have to do every step. That's the other thing, okay? The steps are there because as a whole, as a process together, you get a complete picture of the business and a complete action plan, understanding all the numbers that are available to you. But they don't have to have all the numbers if they don't want them, okay? It's a choice. So the important thing for you is that step 6 is about giving them some trend analysis, okay? Now, it's lovely, isn't it? Now, with the software that's available, you can come up with some really great trend analysis. Again, the important thing is to focus on numbers that are important to the client, okay? Again, we can get really carried away with some of this software and build these massive dashboards and these massive things because we love numbers and we can make them do whatever we want. In reality, what are we giving that's of value to the client, okay? So for step 6, we want to make sure that they understand what's been happening in their business and learn from the past and learn from what works and what doesn't. So some of that trend analysis may not just be basic sales have gone up or gone down, but looking at what sales products have been going up and what sales products have been going down. Actually starting to say to them, look, start being specific. You can see you've got a product line here that is not selling. Is there a way of repositioning that in the marketplace to sell it, or do you stop making it? If you're a service industry, what are the things that people are really wanting from you now? And are there things that actually are making you money and things that aren't? Are you aware of the things that are profitable, the services that are profitable and the services that aren't? And some of the costs that are now being incurred, with service industries, in order to be safe, how are you managing those extra costs? How is that working? So using the trends and ratios from previous years to see what can we learn from them and what can we apply moving forward to help us with that forecasting that we're doing for the future. And for those one-page plans, what do we need to track? Are there any numbers in that trend analysis that we've done that actually have triggered a sort of an alarm bell that says, probably we need to start tracking that on the one-page plan. We need to know what's happening there because it's an effect it has, okay? So the opposite one is obviously like looking at what your competitors are doing. I don't intend looking at this. We've done loads of work on benchmark, okay? There is a whole benchmark toolkit in there. The important thing, yet again, is getting them to understand that it's about emulating others. So yes, it's looking at where they are in comparison to others, red, amber, green, or whatever percentage they want. But particularly on the one-page one, where you can see the potential that's available, there is a blank one underneath, and it's like, what are they wanting to do? What steps are their next steps? Okay, so if they're red at the moment, what are the first steps to get them into amber? Okay, what are the first steps that need to happen to change? And is that something that they can focus on now? Who else do they need to get involved? Those sorts of things. Because again, we have a lot of businesses, don't we, that say, I can't do that. That can't be done in my industry. When you look at the benchmark data, you could actually blow that out of the water and say, well, it is being done by somebody somewhere because of the numbers that are coming up. And maybe that's, again, saying to them, well, okay, have a look and think about what other people are doing in your industry, but also have a look at what people are doing outside your industry. So one of the things that we've always done at AVN is look at what is happening in other industries, what is happening out in the world in other places, and working out how can we adapt that to be something that's useful to accountants. You know, how can we adapt it to be a generic way that you can use with your clients, or you can just evolve with your clients. That's what we're doing, and it's the same thing with them. Looking at what are your competitors doing, and you won't know the exact thing, but you might look at they will know who their main competitors are, and actually think, okay, what can we do to make that better? And again, that benchmark software may lead you to go back to success driver mapping and look at processes. It may lead you to go to simple stuff that works and look at sales drivers. It may lead you go back to your one-page plan and go, let's have a look at what key numbers we're measuring. Because all of this is evolving. It's constantly evolving. And that's the thing, none of it is set in stone. The one-page plan is not set in stone. It can change. Those numbers can change. You will need to find the right ones, and you will need to measure them and see how the trends are happening with them. But don't think you're locked into that same number forever and a day, because you're not. So it's really important that that you do that, because it's all about helping them make decisions. Okay, all of this is about giving them true numbers to make decisions on, not just I think we're doing okay. I think we need to cut our costs. I think we need to do this. No, get some real numbers. Let's have some proper informed decisions. That's the whole point of it. So all of this is leading up to, obviously, getting some actions in place, but also most of their goals will eventually lead to that business being worth something. Okay? And so as you're working with them, we need some way of measuring increase in the worth. Now that could be profitability, obviously. But what we find, and you find with us as well, is that at the beginning, there's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of extra effort. There's a lot of extra cost in time and energy and products, possibly software, whatever else. That means that your profits don't show great in the first few years. You know, it possibly, you know, that investment that you make in that time in those products and whatever, you know, there hasn't yet generated the income. And so we created a piece of software that allows you to provide a quick way of valuing your business that also takes into account what's going on internally with the business. So the work that's happening inside. So I'm just going to quickly check the chat box before I move on. Okay, so I'm going to show you a piece of software that actually is not on the dashboard. It's an added value tool that you have to download currently at the moment, and it's called Business Valuation. Sorry, I'm on a virtual machine with this and it's just gone to sleep. There we go. Let me wake up a minute. And Business Valuation was, again, partly created to help people discuss systems and systemizing, because we did a huge amount of research. We asked lots and lots of business owners, and we asked them to value a business. And the resource is actually in System Builder for valuing a business. Let me just move this out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. And in it, we asked them to value a business that had no systems and was completely dependent. Well, we asked them an average business first, then the same business but that had no systems and was completely dependent on the business owner, and finally on the business that was completely systemized and therefore was not dependent on the business owner at all and could run without them. So somebody buying that business would know that it would continue to generate income no matter what. And what happened was, in that research, we found out that people would be prepared to pay 87.77% more for fully systemized business than one without systems. Now that's a massive difference. When you've got an entrepreneur wanting to take on a new business, if they know that it's going to continue to function and all their job is to then develop it, grow it in other ways, that's much more of an ideal investment than a business that actually depended on a business owner, and therefore all you're selling basically is the client base and who knows whether they'll stay or not. So you can value a business obviously on different ways. You can do an earning, turnover, and obviously the net asset valuation would be if you were just going to sell it and break it up, okay? But it's there for completeness. So you can do it on turnover if you know it's a multiple. It's very rare for most businesses that is the way that we look at pricing it. I know as accountants, we often go on price multiples, but the world's changing with that as well. So there are very few. So what we tend to work on mainly is on an earnings basis. So in here, we've just got 3 years of profit before tax. Now, what it does is it allows you to adjust for any exceptional things that have happened. So if exceptional remuneration adjustments that the directors have taken, not their standard ones, and any other exceptional things that have happened in the business. So for example, you know, if there's been an exceptional cost that's gone out, or you know, somehow there's been a sale. So you might have had a one-off commission sale that's gone through that's affected the numbers. So you can do an adjustment. Okay. Then what it next does is it works out an average net profit from those. So what it'll do is it will look at the profit and it will look at the tax, okay, and come up with a net profit after tax. Now here we've got a few decisions to make with the client. So currently, you know, is this business growing rapidly? So there are some business out there that are seriously growing rapidly. And if so, you can apply a growth rate. So you tick this box and you would apply what growth rate you expect to happen to the business. Most businesses aren't, okay? It's a steady thing. So then you have, what is the sustainable business profitability? So if they've got a growth rate, that'll change that. And then we look at the PE ratio, okay? Which obviously you can find from, you know, the Financial Times online or whatever else. So depending on their industry, thinking about companies on the stock market that have a similar trading entity, a business type, then you find their PE ratio, okay? And you'll find that, so I've just put in 6.5. Now, quite a while ago, and it has to be because you'll know from the name, BDO Stoy Hayward did some research, and they did, I think they did it over a series of 9 years, where they did some research about what is the difference between the price earnings ratio for a listed company and a non-listed company or a business. And they came up with an adjustment, which is in actually the options if you want to have a look, okay? So the option at the moment is the adjustment is 0.592. Okay, that can change if you want. So you can then actually, if you want to, change that if you don't believe that's right, okay? But we're sticking with that. So what it does is that it takes the listed company's price earnings ratio and it adjusts it to what it thinks would be a non-listed company. And from that, it gets a commercial value for the business, okay? Now, of course, you've got to remember that this is not a commercial valuation for tax purposes. It's not, in reality, a business is worth what somebody will pay for it. So there are lots of other things that could come with that, but this is about putting a line in the sand. Okay, so at the moment, a commercial valuation for your business with average systems would be 237,000. This is a small business, obviously. Okay, so then we can start looking at some key things about it. And this is where we start looking at systems and how important and how much reliance there is on the business owner. So to what extent is the business dependent upon any individual or group, where 1 is totally dependent and 10 is to no extent? So this is where you have those great conversations, isn't it, about, you know, are there people that you can't do without? Do you need systems in place should somebody be off sick? Okay, what are the issues? So they could say, well, actually, I think I'm about a 3 out of 10. Okay, the majority of people, I probably haven't got systems in place for that, and I really don't know how we'd step in. But we always manage, but actually, have you got those systems in place? The next thing is, to what extent does everyone follow a system rather than doing it their own way? And this is about having consistency in delivery, isn't it? This is knowing that every widget you build comes out exactly the same. This is about knowing that every customer has exactly the same service experience. This is about knowing that the internal processes always happen. So, and happen in the way that you want. So, do people do things their own way? Or do they have things written down? Again, they might go, okay, I'm a 3. And then the last question is, how well does the business work without you? So as the business owner, can you go on holiday, not check your emails? Does this sound familiar, guys? Because I ask this of people a lot. You know, can you go away? Can you have a break? Will it work perfectly without you? Or do you feel you have to constantly check on it? Do you feel that actually they're going to be constantly calling you, emailing you, checking you, whatever? Okay, and they make that decision. So they are making those numbers. They're choosing those numbers, okay? And that affects them because it produces a penalty, okay? So the penalty means that if we have a look at the business at the moment, okay, then the value of your business has dropped from what we said, which was 237,940, down to 139,176, because there's a penalty. Because if somebody bought your business, it would probably fall apart within a week, because you're saying that key people who may choose to leave would disappear, that the people who are there are just doing things their own way. So actually, how does a new business owner know that stuff's going to be delivered consistently? And actually, it was all reliant on you. So who will they go to? There's a client there that doesn't know, you know, if they buy your business, they will take on this headache of work, okay? So you come up with a value. Now, if you have a look at a systemized business, it could be a lot bigger. It could be heading for £500,000. We could make that even better if we lifted your profits up too, couldn't we? So the idea is that you have this discussion and you put a line in the sand now. So the value for your business now is 139,176. And then maybe a year later, you come back to this software, okay? And you put in another year's data. So you come back here, then the years would change. You put in another year's data, okay? And as you move forward through here, okay, you will maybe change these numbers. So if the next time we speak, we can say, actually, yes, we've got some stuff in here. I've probably systemized 50%, 60% of what I do. I'm feeling now that actually I'm at a 4, okay? All of a sudden, we've jumped up. So there is still a penalty, but it's nowhere near as bad. So you can say to them, yes, I understand your profits may not have risen, but look at the value of your business. Because you've been investing in getting these processes in place, looking at how things are doing better, you've improved the value of your business. So that's another great tool that's part of this, how much is your business worth? It helps you show that all the work that you're asking them to do and you're supporting them with is increasing the profit of the business. Now also, once you become an AVN approved member, which foundation members can do, it's just a form you need to complete out System Builder. So if you just go into System Builder and type in approved in the knowledge base, you'll get it. And there are 10 criteria that we'll ask you to just self-certificate on to say that there is a consistency in the sort of delivery you want to, that you give as an AVN member. You also have the right to give or sell System Builder. And there is a business edition of System Builder that comes, and it can either come with just a handful of resources in it. Again, there's a whole document about this in System Builder that are just sort of get them to hit the ground running. Each one of those asking them to contact you for more help. Or you can have it that has a whole suite of systems in there, except for the operational. So it will have a whole load of marketing systems, a whole load of people systems, a whole load of finance systems, a whole load of admin systems, a whole load of customer systems. But the people one, the operational ones won't be in there because every business is different. And so they may be the ones you need to focus on. And again, it's about helping them, give them add value, because we only charge for those that initial suite of systems, okay? So you can give away the software for free and it comes with the 7 systems. If you want them to have it with the systems in it, it's a one-off payment of £300 to us, which you can either absorb or you charge them. You can charge them whatever you like. In fact, we don't have any control of that, so you can charge them a monthly subscription for using it, and you can charge them a support subscription fee. That's your choice. And the supply and supporting documents that are in System Builder explain all of that. It's up to you. What we want to do is make sure that businesses have somewhere to start. This is what we always say to you with System Builder. It's a starting point. They don't have all the action resources and all the other stuff that you have in yours. All they have is the systems section, the systems manual section. But it's a good place to start. If on their systems they're thinking they need to measure team happiness, well, great, there's something in there for measuring team happiness. If there's something about customer happiness, great, there's a resource in there for how to measure customer happiness. If there's something about workflow, they know that operational system isn't in there, so they need to work on that. And that's something that you can use success driver mapping to start mapping out, or even a series of post-it notes on the wall, you know, but as a sort of a brainstorming session. So you give them that idea of helping them grow, but by putting in the systems and having it documented somewhere like System Builder where all the systems are live and the best case scenario at the moment, you know, they are written to try and be, and they should always be written and updated to be the best they can be at the moment with best practice in there, then you can actually help them move forward. Step 8 is about improvement potential. Now, if you joined my training the other day, I pulled up the profit review, which is a simple one-page piece of software. It's just actually it's a Word document with an embedded spreadsheet in. And you just put in a couple of key numbers and it says if you can improve your sales by 2%, 5%, 10%, reduce your costs by 2%, 5%, 10%, this is the effect on your bottom line profits. Would that be worth having a conversation? So for some people, the entry into the whole PMI is just that one little document. That one document where they go, do you know what? I'd like to talk to you about this. It says here that if I can improve my sales by 10%, cut my cost by 10%, then actually I can improve my profits by, I don't know, £120,000, tell me how to do it, then actually you say, well, actually the way you do it is you have a structure. And the structure we use is the performance measurement improvement system. And what we do is we start measuring, but we actually start tracking things so that you know you're on the right road to getting the numbers you want, okay? So it's really important to look at that. That's one of the ways of showing potential. So that's one way into the numbers folder. One of the other ways is obviously the benchmark toolkit, because you're going to say, right, well, let's put your benchmark report in, okay? That goes in section 6. What are the actions that come out of that? Well, actually, the actions are step 9, your improvement plan. Let's start building an improvement plan on step 9 of all the things. So each time you come up with actions in an action plan, okay, your action plan needs to say, there's this copy in here. There isn't, but it's the standard one that's in System Builder that says, you know, who's going to do this? When are you going to do it by? Do you need help with this? So that every time they have an action, they think, could do with some help with that, tick the box, oh yes, I need to work with my accountant on this. And you need to say to them, every time you tick anything I ask you to do or I talk to you about or you need action, you know, we can help in some way. That's not you doing it, okay? That's not you physically writing systems for them. That is not you physically process mapping everything else, unless you're going to get paid for it and it be valuable, okay? But it's about you giving them those ideas, those other ways of doing it. Now, I know that Jenny showed you Simple Stuff That Works in quite a lot of detail the other week, and that's on the app. Business Potential is the one that we often, Jenny and I love because it's so simple. Okay, so that's in, it's a downloadable one, unfortunately, again, for AVN members, added value members. And it's really the forerunner to Simple Stuff That Works. So it's Simple Stuff That Works, but without all those videos, okay, and examples. It's a very simple, so if you want to just open their eyes to this and then say we want to look into more detail, you could use this first and then bring in Simple Stuff That Works to go through it in more detail. So just like Simple Stuff That Works, you put in some key details, Oh, maybe not that many. And so adjustment. Okay. Okay. And then, if you remember, with simple stuff that works, we're about, we talk about pricing in the first one. Yeah, how by increasing or reducing your prices is exactly the same here, the cost on the effect on the sales. So if you increase your prices by 5% or 10%, you actually get an extra £25,000. Could you do that? Yeah, or maybe you could just do it on a certain part of your market. How many do you think you'd lose customer-wise? Well, the calculation button says you could lose 11%. I'm pretty much guessing you won't. You might lose, let's put 3.5. Okay, you've still made £17,500. Much simpler. With you as well as a added value member, where you see the question mark, that links to all the Business Edge questions that support doing that. So this is where you can get more detail. But a lot of this stuff is built into simple stuff that works in the video format. Okay. But if you've got clients that just like to see a single screen, that don't want to have an hour, you just want to show them the effect, then what you could say is, right, well, I've shown you the pricing bit. One of the easiest ways is to increase the number of customers. So if we increase the number of customers by 6%, that's the effect on profit. Is that something you'd like to talk about? Great. Well, let's book a meeting. And then you use simple stuff that works on the section on how to get more customers. Okay. Use the videos, use the examples, use strategies to come up with an action plan. So this is a nice, simple way of doing it. Okay. So this is, like I said, a very simple story. Jenny and I used to like it because for us, we like it to be very simple, and simple stuff that works takes the time to work through. And we know now that the best way to break it down is to break it down into 6 or 7 individual sections and just have a couple of hours on each section with the client. Because by the time you've looked at the videos, by the time you've gone through the strategies, by the time you've discussed their business and what's going on in it, 2 hours has flown and you've only done one section. But if you want to just very quickly show somebody the opportunity, the potential, and get them to come up with some of these numbers, and I'm only putting small numbers in here, okay? And I'm going to just reduce the defection by doing something great. Okay, and it might be then that in order for us to help you do some of this stuff, let's put an initial fee of £6,000 in there for our work, okay? Then we can see initially that at the moment you're making 124,000. By spending £6,000 with us, we could nearly double it. We can give you the actions to double it. You will have to do the work. Yeah, there are things you will have to put in place, but we can give you guidance. We can show you how to do it. And the exponential improvement, you know, is even more, because if you get more customers, buy more often, and it all rolls up. And so actually there could be a lot more, and it could seriously affect the value of your business. So there's a graph and there's a report, etc. But another simple product that you can use to get people in, because the whole point is to get them into the idea of, right, we need to start measuring the numbers. We need to start tracking the performance of the numbers, and then we need to start working on improving them. And by improving them, then we can start taking action. So the last step is about having the plan, is making sure that you get things moving, that you start using the actions that come out, you track all of those. And if you want to, then you can start moving forward into giving them some really detailed support. So again, it'll depend on the client, but there is the Business Edge program, which is 102 questions and ideas of how to help people grow their business. It's structured through, it's actually a PowerPoint process that allows you to drill through and find things and set them to actions to do. Or if there's somebody who really wants to invest in moving their business forward, then again, for added value members in System Builder, there is the Making It Happen program. And the Making It Happen program is a 12-month intensive process where you go in and you look at three pillars of their business. So you help them look at their sales and marketing, you look at their operations and your people, and then you help them look at their systems and their structures inside. And that involves you having some really intensive support process, including sometimes just nagging them to do work. And that sort of product, I mean, we sold that product over 20 years ago, and we were selling it then for £29,700. But the great thing about that is the partner doesn't have to deliver it all. And that, because it's so structured and it's all written down in System Builder, and every meeting is written down in System Builder with how you deliver it and what you do, it can be delivered by a client manager. It can be delivered by somebody else who is really interested in helping that business grow. And for, you know, nearly £30,000, you know, that's a good salary, isn't it, for somebody to do that sort of work? But we're only talking maybe half a day a week that you spend with them. So a really good way of looking at things. So the whole idea behind this is about showing them the value that you can give them, okay? You're giving the value with some clarity at the beginning. You're helping them plan that and see some real numbers and start feeling confident that things can get better, you know, things can work, but having some, being able to make informed decisions, not just guesswork. Giving them some accountability, having monthly or quarterly meetings with them where they know that there's somebody on their side, somebody they can talk to about their business, somebody that they can ask questions of, but somebody who will help them track those key numbers that need to be happening. Somebody will help them understand that the accounts give them some real key useful information. We'll show them where to focus on trend analysis. We'll show them where in the business to look at and look at where it can help them grow. We'll show them, again, how competitors are doing and actually how to emulate that. What could we do to make it, you know, to be the best in there? And to improve the value of the business itself, because if that is ultimately part of the pension pot, we need to make that worth as much as we can. And looking, again, at sensitivity. So making sure that, showing them that it doesn't have to be big things. They don't have to change their whole world, their whole business. It's a little thing at a time. So giving them some ideas and making sure at the end they have some way of actually being able to improve that. So having an improvement action plan that they can go away and do themselves with your support. And you could just sell them, you know, as part of a monthly package, you know, that ringing and checking in that they're taking action. Or they want to actually get some real business consulting work. Okay. I'm just going to check the chat box. Okay. Yeah. Phil's put about the fact that, you know, this comparison between a business has no systems and a business is a massive difference, and it's quite true. It's, you know, because of investing. If you've got £1 million to invest, where are you going to invest it? You want to invest it in something that actually can run without you having to do too much initially and generate you an income, but that actually you get excited about building and growing, and therefore make it better. So yes, it's really important. That systems part is quite phenomenal. Okay, so I'm going to stop my share. And I want to say, basically, see if we've got any questions. Can you see how having a structure like that, it's really useful? It's really good for having a conversation. And also the fact that because it can be pick and mix, you can come in at it at so many different ways, but then use the structure to show people. And particularly at the moment, with us being so passionate about getting people to have some cash flow forecasts, you know, getting people to understand that they've got loans to repay in a year's time. I mean, last week I shared, didn't I, that lovely timeline that Paul later had shared with me about, you know, when things need to be being repaid. You know, they may have been delaying their VAT, they may have been delaying their pay-as-you-earn, they may have bounce back loans, but all this money has to be paid at some point. And actually being confident that they've got control of when that gets paid, that's really important too. So this sort of links, I think, really well. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. We've got 3 minutes left. So anybody got any questions? Okay, so I just want to remind you that this Thursday morning, and it may be at 9:30 because of Steve Pipe's webinar at 8:10 that I hadn't realised, and he often overruns. I will be doing a session on system builder and systems, and how to write systems, how to develop them, how to build it into your business, and that learning how to share that with your clients. So that's really important. And on Thursday lunchtime in our Accountants Helping Accountants sessions, we've got a great presentation from one of our new practice growth experts, Bernard Keevy. So he's going to give us some really good ideas about how we can help our clients now with some great ideas. So thank you very much, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I hope you've learned something that's been really helpful. And you've got some actions. So maybe the action is to go away and do that goal setting on yourself, first of all, and maybe run the whole PMI through your own business too. If you don't have access to it now as a foundation member, okay, please let us know and we can have a chat about it as your practice growth experts. And there's some stuff that we can do with you personally. Obviously, you might not be able to do it with clients yet, but we could still do with you personally. So let us know how you go. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.